Alan Mercer had nothing left to live for. The war with the Valkyrie had taken everything from him: his wife, his home, his purpose. Now he wandered the military outposts of Frontier Station 9, drowning his sorrows in synthetic alcohol and taking whatever dangerous missions command offered. It didn't matter if he died anymore. He sat alone in the corner of the station's bar, nursing his third drink of the night. The artificial lighting flickered above, casting shadows across his unshaven face. His uniform was clean but wrinkled, like he had stopped caring about appearances months ago. The other soldiers gave him space. They knew his story, or at least parts of it. The man who lost everything at the Battle of Arcturus. The man whose wife Lisa had been on one of the civilian transports that the Valkyrie destroyed. Alan's communicator buzzed. A message from command. Colonel Diane Wright wanted to see him immediately. He downed the rest of his drink, feeling the burn in his throat, and pushed himself up from the table. The corridors of Frontier Station 9 were crowded with military personnel and civilian contractors. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone except him. Alan moved through them like a ghost, barely registering their existence. When he reached Colonel Wright's office, he straightened his posture out of habit and knocked on the metal door. "Enter," a firm voice called from inside. Colonel Diane Wright sat behind a desk cluttered with data tablets and holographic projections. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, Mercer." Alan obeyed, his face blank. "How are you holding up?" she asked, though they both knew she didn't really care about the answer. "Fine, Colonel. What's the mission?" Wright nodded, appreciating his directness. She tapped on her desk console, and a holographic image appeared between them. It showed a small settlement on a reddish planet. Another tab zoomed in on a modest prefabricated home with a greenhouse dome attached to one side. "Proxima B," she said. "A frontier world, barely habitable. This settlement went dark 3 years ago. We thought everyone there was dead until our long-range scanners picked up signs of human life last month." Alan stared at the hologram without comment. Another tap showed a blonde woman working in the greenhouse. Then a young boy, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, playing in the red soil outside. "Intelligence believes this woman is Catherine Holt, former xenobiologist with the Science Division," Wright continued. "She disappeared around the same time the settlement went dark. We have reason to believe she's been communicating with the Valkyrie leadership." Alan's attention sharpened. "The Valkyrie? You're sure?" "Our scanners detected signal patterns consistent with their communication methods, and there's more." Wright leaned forward. "Before she disappeared, Dr. Holt was researching Valkyrie biology. We think she's developing biological weapons for them." "And the boy?" Alan asked, looking at the image of the child. "Unknown. Records show Holt had no children. He could be another colonist's child she took in, or—" Wright paused. "He could be something else. Something not entirely human." Alan's jaw tightened. The Valkyrie had experimented with human DNA before creating hybrid spies that had infiltrated 3 military bases in the early days of the war. The results had been devastating. "You want me to verify their identities," Alan said, already guessing where this was going, "and eliminate the threat," Wright finished for him. "Both of them." Alan stared at her. "You want me to kill a woman and her kid?" "I want you to protect humanity from a possible Valkyrie asset and a potential bioweapon," Wright corrected. "If the boy is human and uninvolved, extraction protocols will be initiated." Alan didn't believe that for a second. In his experience, command didn't leave loose ends, but he also knew that if Holt was working with the Valkyrie, she was responsible for deaths like those at Arcturus. Deaths like Lisa's. "Why send me?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Wright's expression softened slightly, which looked unnatural on her hard face. "Because you've got nothing to lose, Mercer. And because if anyone is equipped to handle what you might find there, it's you. Your combat record is exceptional, and your experience with Valkyrie technology is unmatched in the available operatives." She didn't mention the other reason, that he was expendable. A broken soldier with a death wish was perfect for high-risk missions. "When do I leave?" Alan asked. "Tomorrow at 0600. You'll take a stealth dropship. It's a 3-day journey to Proxima B. Wright slid a data chip across her desk. All the intelligence we have is on here. Memorize it, then destroy it. Alan pocketed the chip and stood up. Anything else? Just one thing. Wright's eyes hardened again. This mission is classified level 5. No communication back to base until it's complete. You're on your own out there. Alan nodded. He was always on his own these days. Back in his quarters, Alan reviewed the mission data. Catherine Holt had been a brilliant scientist, specializing in comparative xenobiology. Her work had focused on finding commonalities between human and Valkyrie physiology, supposedly for medical applications. But some of her research had been flagged as potentially crossing ethical lines. Then 3 years ago, she requested a transfer to the Proxima B research outpost. 6 months after that, all communication with the outpost ceased. The images of the woman working in the greenhouse could be Holt, but they were grainy and taken from far away. The boy was a complete mystery. There were no records of him anywhere in the system. Alan packed his gear methodically. Weapons, stealth suit, surveillance equipment, emergency rations, medical supplies. The familiar routine helped quiet his mind. He didn't allow himself to think about what it meant to kill a child. If the boy was a Valkyrie creation, it wasn't really a child at all. And if it was human, well, he would cross that bridge when he came to it. The next morning, Alan boarded the stealth dropship. It was small, designed for one person, with just enough room for him and his equipment. As the ship launched from the station, he caught a last glimpse of the artificial lights of Frontier Station 9 against the darkness of space. He felt nothing at leaving. No place had felt like home since Lisa died. The journey to Proxima B was uneventful. Alan spent most of it in cryosleep to conserve the ship's resources. When he woke on the 3rd day, the red planet filled his view screen. From orbit, it looked peaceful. It was hard to imagine anyone choosing to live in such a desolate place. But then Alan supposed that was the point. If you wanted to hide, you went where no one would look for you. The dropship entered the atmosphere at night, using the darkness as additional cover. Its stealth technology would make it nearly impossible to detect, but Alan took no chances. He landed 5 kilometers from the settlement in a ravine that would hide the ship from view. After securing the vessel, Alan checked his weapons one last time. He would approach on foot, observe the targets for a day or two, then make his move. Quick and clean, just like all his other missions. As he began his trek across the rocky landscape, the dim light of Proxima Centauri casting long shadows, Alan tried to focus on the mission parameters. But in the back of his mind, a question nagged at him. What kind of woman would come to this desolate place, and what secrets was she hiding? Whatever the answer, he would find out soon. And then, one way or another, this mission would end. Perhaps, he thought darkly, it might finally be his last. The settlement was smaller than Alan expected. From his hidden position among large rocks half a kilometer away, he studied it through his high-powered scope. The main building was a standard prefabricated structure, designed to withstand the planet's harsh conditions. Next to it stood a greenhouse dome full of plants that shouldn't be able to grow in Proxima B's soil. A small barn-like building hummed in the background, likely housing generators and water purification systems. For 3 days, Alan watched Catherine Holt and the boy. He tracked their routines, noted their security measures, and looked for any sign of Valkyrie presence. But what he saw didn't match what Colonel Wright had told him. Catherine didn't move like a traitor or a weapons developer. She moved like a mother protecting her child. Every morning she checked the perimeter sensors before letting the boy outside. She kept him within eyesight at all times. In the greenhouse, she taught him how to tend to the strange plants they were growing. At night they sat by the window, and she read to him from a tablet. The boy seemed perfectly human. He had sandy brown hair and moved with the boundless energy of any 5-year-old. He played with toys he had made himself from local materials. He laughed. He cried when he fell and scraped his knee. Nothing suggested he was anything other than a normal human child. On the 4th day, Alan decided it was time to make contact. His plan was simple. He would pose as a surveyor from the mining corporation that owned this quadrant of the planet. He would claim he got separated from his team during a storm. This would give him a reason to request shelter and get inside their home. Alan approached the settlement in the early evening when the reddish light of Proxima Centauri was beginning to fade. He wore civilian clothes over his stealth suit and carried only one visible weapon, a standard sidearm that a corporate surveyor might have for protection. His other weapons were hidden but within easy reach. He was 20 meters from the main building when the door opened. Catherine Holt stood there with a pulse rifle aimed at his chest. She looked different up close, harder, more weathered than her personnel file suggested. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical braid and her eyes were sharp with suspicion. "That's far enough," she called out. "Identify yourself." Alan raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't a threat. "Name's Alan Davis. I'm a surveyor with Proxima Mining. My team and I got separated during the magnetic storm 2 days ago. My communications are down and I've been walking since." Catherine didn't lower her weapon. "Mining Corporation doesn't send surveyors to this sector, and they certainly don't send them armed like military operatives." Alan cursed inwardly. She was more observant than he'd anticipated. "Look, I'm just lost. I need shelter until my team finds me. You can keep the gun on me if it makes you feel better." Before Catherine could respond, the boy appeared in the doorway, behind her. He peeked out, curious eyes studying Alan without fear. "Mommy, he looks lost," the boy said. "Like the Valkyrie traveler who came last season." Alan's blood ran cold. Valkyrie traveler? That confirmed it. Catherine was indeed in contact with the enemy. Catherine glanced down at her son, a flash of worry crossing her face. She turned back to Alan, eyes narrowed. "You can stay in the barn for one night, but I'll be watching you. Any sudden moves and I shoot. Understood?" Alan nodded. "Understood. Thank you." "Sam, go inside and finish your dinner," Catherine told the boy. He didn't move immediately, still staring at Alan with a strange expression, almost like recognition. "Sam," Catherine repeated more firmly. The boy finally turned and went back inside. She gestured with her rifle for Alan to walk toward the barn. "Food and water are inside. There's a cot in the back. Don't try to enter the main house. The security system will stun you if you get within 3 meters of any door or window without my authorization." Alan nodded again and headed toward the barn. As he passed Catherine, he noted how she kept a perfect distance, close enough to shoot accurately, far enough that he couldn't disarm her easily. She had military training. That wasn't in her file. The barn was neat and organized. Farm tools hung on one wall. Spare parts for machinery were stacked on shelves. In the back was a small living area with a cot, a table, and some basic supplies. Catherine had clearly prepared this space for visitors, though Alan doubted she had many. "I'll bring you some food," Catherine said from the doorway. "Don't touch anything." When she left, Alan immediately began searching the barn. He moved carefully, making sure to return everything to its exact position. The generator was not standard issue. It had been modified with technology he didn't recognize. Some of the components looked almost like Valkyrie design, but not quite. Under a loose floor panel, he found communications equipment. Alan checked the frequencies it was monitoring. To his surprise, they weren't Valkyrie communication channels. The equipment seemed to be tracking something deep underground. A soft knock at the door interrupted his investigation. Alan quickly replaced the floor panel and stood up. The door opened to reveal the boy Sam holding a tray of food. "Mommy said to bring you dinner," Sam said, entering cautiously. He set the tray on the table. It contained synthesized protein, some kind of native fruit, and water. "Thank you, Sam," Alan said, keeping his distance. He needed information, and the boy might be easier to get it from than his mother. "That's a nice place you and your mom have here." Sam nodded. "We built it ourselves. Well, mostly Mom. I helped with the greenhouse. Just the two of you out here, that must be lonely." Sam shrugged. "Sometimes, but we get visitors. Like the Valkyrie traveler you mentioned?" Alan kept his tone casual. Sam's eyes widened slightly. Mommy says I shouldn't talk about that. I understand it's probably a secret. Alan sat down at the table, trying to appear non-threatening. Do you know why it's a secret? The boy looked at him with surprising intensity. Mommy says you're probably a spy, he said matter-of-factly. Are you here to take us back? Alan was taken aback by the directness of the question. Back where, Sam? To Earth, or to the big ships. Sam's expression darkened. I don't want to go back. They hurt people there. Before Alan could ask more questions, Catherine appeared in the doorway. Her face was tense. Sam, I told you to leave the tray and come right back. Sorry, Mommy. We were just talking. Catherine put a protective hand on her son's shoulder. Go back to the house. Now. When the boy was gone, Catherine turned to Alan. Her pulse rifle was back in her hands. Perimeter sensors detected dropship signatures entering the atmosphere. Military class, did you bring friends? No. Alan answered truthfully. My mission was solo. As soon as the word mission left his mouth, he knew he'd made a mistake. Catherine's suspicion was instantly confirmed. I knew it, she said, her grip tightening on the rifle. You're not a lost surveyor. Before Alan could respond, the ground shook beneath them. The distant sound of explosions echoed across the landscape. Catherine's eyes widened with fear but not surprise. It was as if she had been expecting this. They've found it, she whispered, more to herself than to Alan. Found what? Alan demanded, his hand moving toward his hidden weapon. Catherine gave him a look of pure contempt. You have no idea what you're part of, do you? You're just following orders, like a good soldier. Another explosion, closer this time. Catherine glanced toward the main house. I have to get Sam, she said. If you try to stop me, I will kill you. Alan believed her. He let her go, watching as she ran back to the house. Through the window, he could see her grabbing an emergency bag that had been prepared in advance. She was ready for this. Whatever this was. As the sky lit up with the flare of dropship engines, Alan made his decision. His mission was to eliminate Catherine Holt and the boy. But first he needed to know what was happening here. What was buried underground that was worth sending military forces to retrieve? And why did the boy speak of the Valkyrie as visitors rather than enemies? Alan checked his weapons and stepped out of the barn. The truth was somewhere in this settlement, and he was going to find it before completing his mission, even if that meant disobeying orders for the first time in his career. Alan ran toward the main house as more explosions lit up the evening sky. Through the window, he could see Catherine frantically gathering supplies while Sam clutched a small backpack. Alan drew his weapon and entered the house, pushing the door open with his shoulder. Catherine spun around, her pulse rifle aimed at his chest. Stay back! What's going on? Alan demanded. What have those military ships come for? Like you don't know, she spat. I was sent to eliminate you and the boy, because Command thinks you're developing biological weapons for the Valkyrie, Alan said bluntly. But that's not what's happening here, is it? Catherine's eyes widened slightly. Biological weapons, is that what they told you? She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. They're lying. They always lie. Another explosion rocked the ground, closer. This time, dust fell from the ceiling. We don't have time for this, Catherine said. She grabbed a device from the table and checked its screen. They found the entrance to the caves. We need to move now. What caves? What's down there? Alan kept his weapon trained on her. The truth, she replied simply. She turned to Sam. Get your emergency kit just like we practiced. The boy nodded and ran to his room. Catherine faced Alan again. You have two choices. Help us get to the southern ridge where we might have a chance to escape, or try to complete your mission right now. Alan hesitated. Everything about this situation felt wrong. His orders had been clear, but what he was seeing didn't match what he'd been told. And there was something about the boy. If I help you, you tell me everything, he said finally. Deal, but we need to move fast. Catherine lowered her rifle slightly. The military forces will secure this area in less than 15 minutes. Sam returned, wearing his backpack and clutching a small toy made of wire and colored stones. He looked at Alan with big, frightened eyes. "Are you going to help us?" he asked. Before Alan could answer, the ground shook violently. This wasn't an explosion. It felt like something massive was moving beneath them. "They're activating the defense systems," Catherine muttered. She grabbed a tablet from the table and shoved it into her bag. "We need to go. Now." They left through the back door. Catherine led them away from the settlement, toward a line of rocky hills in the distance. They moved quickly but carefully, using the terrain for cover. Above them, military dropships circled, searchlights scanning the ground. "Keep low," Alan instructed, falling into the familiar role of soldier. He guided them from shadow to shadow, avoiding the sweeping lights. They had covered about half a kilometer when Sam stumbled, wincing in pain. Catherine immediately stopped to check on him. "My ankle hurts," Sam whimpered. Catherine looked at Alan, fear and determination in her eyes. "We need to keep moving." Without hesitation, Alan holstered his weapon and picked up Sam. The boy was light, too light for a child his age. Up close, Alan noticed faint scars on the boy's temples, partially hidden by his hair. "What happened to him?" Alan asked quietly as they continued moving. Catherine's jaw tightened. "The same thing that happened to all the test subjects, the military's experiments." "What experiments?" "Not now," she hissed, pointing to a dropship that was landing ahead of them. "We need to change direction." They veered east, toward a steeper, rockier area. The going was slower with Alan carrying Sam, but the terrain offered better cover from the searchlights. After 20 minutes of difficult travel, Catherine stopped at what looked like a random spot among the rocks. She moved some stones aside, revealing a hidden panel. She pressed her hand against it and a section of the ground slid open, exposing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "Inside quickly," she urged. Alan hesitated, his military training screaming that this could be a trap, but the approaching sound of soldiers and the trust in Sam's eyes made him decide. He ducked into the opening, still carrying the boy. Catherine followed, sealing the entrance behind them. Lights activated automatically as they descended the stairs. The passage was narrow but well constructed, with smooth walls that looked like they were made of some kind of advanced material, not just carved rock. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage opened into a larger room filled with equipment. Some of it looked like standard human technology, but other pieces were clearly alien in design. Catherine set her bag down and immediately went to a console. Her fingers flew over the controls as she checked various readings. "We're safe for now," she said. "The entrance is hidden from their scanners, but they'll find it eventually." Alan set Sam down gently on a cushioned bench against one wall. The boy was pale but trying to be brave. "Time for answers," Alan said firmly. "What is this place? What's really going on here?" Catherine took a deep breath. "This facility was built by the original research team before I arrived. It's connected to a larger underground network that the first explorers discovered." "Explorers? You mean the colonists?" She shook her head. "No. The first humans to come to Proxima B were scientists, not colonists. They discovered something here, something the military wanted to control." "The Valkyrie," Alan guessed. "Not exactly." Catherine went to another console and brought up an image. It showed what looked like ancient ruins, clearly not of human origin. This planet was inhabited long before humans or Valkyrie evolved. The original inhabitants left technology beyond our understanding. Technology that could end the war. How? It can disable weapon systems on both sides. Force peace. Catherine looked at him intently. That's what the military doesn't want anyone to know. They don't want peace. The war is too profitable for the corporations that supply them. Alan struggled to process this. It contradicted everything he'd been taught about the conflict. "And the Valkyrie?" he asked. Sam mentioned a Valkyrie traveler. "They've been sending peace envoys for years," Catherine said. "The military shoots them down before they can make contact. The one that found us was injured. We helped him. He left 3 months ago to bring others. You expect me to believe the Valkyrie want peace? After what they did at Arcturus? After they killed my wife? At this, Sam looked up sharply. Your wife? Catherine went very still. What was your wife's name? She asked carefully. Lisa, Alan replied, confused by their reactions. Lisa Mercer. She died when the Valkyrie destroyed the civilian transport ships during the Battle of Arcturus. Catherine and Sam exchanged a look that Alan couldn't interpret. What? He demanded. Before Catherine could answer, a screen on the wall lit up with an alert. She checked it, and her face paled. They found the main entrance to the cave system. They'll be here in minutes. She turned to Alan, her expression grave. I need to know right now if you're with us, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about yourself in this war. Alan looked at Sam, who was watching him with a strange intensity. There was something familiar about the boy's eyes, something that had been nagging at him since they first met. I'm with you, Alan said, surprising himself with how true it felt. Tell me. Catherine took a deep breath. Alan, Lisa Mercer isn't dead. At least, she wasn't when I last heard from her 6 months ago. The world seemed to tilt beneath Alan's feet. That's impossible. I was there. I saw the transport ships destroyed. What you saw was what they wanted you to see, Catherine said gently. Lisa was my research partner. When we discovered what the military was really doing, she helped me escape with Sam. She stayed behind to gather evidence. No. Alan shook his head. This is some kind of trick. It's not a trick, Sam said quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small holographic projector. He activated it and an image appeared, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Lisa, Alan's wife. How did you get this? Alan whispered, reaching for the hologram with trembling hands. She gave it to me, Sam said, before they took her away. The sound of an explosion echoed through the caves, shaking dust from the ceiling. The military forces were getting closer. We don't have much time, Catherine said urgently. There's something else you need to know, Alan. Something about you. Alan stared at the hologram of Lisa, his mind racing. His wife was alive? It couldn't be true. He had seen the explosion, felt the grief tear through him like a physical wound. You're lying, he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. I wish I were, Catherine replied. She moved to a storage unit built into the wall and pulled out a small device. This will explain everything better than I can. Another explosion rocked the cave, closer this time. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling. We don't have much time, Catherine said. This is a memory scanner. It will show you the truth. Alan backed away. You want to put that thing on my head? No way. Please, Sam said, his voice small but determined. You have to remember. For Lisa. Something in the boy's tone made Alan pause. There was a familiarity there that he couldn't explain. Fine, he said finally, but make it quick. Catherine approached with the device, a slim metal band. This might be disorienting, she warned as she placed it around Alan's head. She activated the device with a touch. Immediately, Alan's vision blurred. Images flashed through his mind, too fast to process at first. Then they slowed, becoming clearer. He saw himself in a military hospital, but the memory felt wrong, layered, as if two different versions were fighting for dominance. In one, he was recovering from injuries sustained at the Battle of Arcturus. In the other, he was strapped to a table, scientists in white coats surrounding him, injecting him with something that burned through his veins. The images shifted. He saw Lisa, not dead but very much alive, reaching for him through a barrier of some kind. Her mouth formed words he couldn't hear. What is this? Alan gasped, gripping the edge of a nearby table to steady himself. Keep watching, Catherine urged. Let it come. More images flooded his mind. A laboratory, rows of tanks, filled with fluid. Faces, his face, and repeated over and over. Then Lisa again. This time with Catherine, both of them in lab coats, both looking horrified at what they were seeing. The final image was the clearest. Lisa standing before him, tears streaming down her face. "They're making copies," she was saying. "Living weapons. But you're still you, Alan. Remember that. Remember me." The device powered down. Alan tore it from his head, breathing hard. His legs gave out and he sank to the floor. "What did you do to me?" he demanded. "I showed you the truth," Catherine said gently. "You're not who you think you are, Alan. You're a clone." Alan shook his head, trying to deny her words. But deep down, something resonated. It explained the strange dreams he'd been having. Dreams of waking in fluid-filled tanks. Dreams of voices speaking about him as if he were an object, not a person. The real Alan Mercer discovered that the military was creating cloned soldiers, Catherine explained quickly. Special forces with implanted memories, programmed loyalty, the perfect weapons. "No," Alan said, but his protest was weaker now. The real Alan and Lisa were working together to expose the program. When they found out, the military tried to capture them. Alan was killed. Lisa helped me escape with the evidence and with Sam. She stayed behind to free the other clones. Alan looked at Sam, seeing him with new eyes. "And the boy? Is he?" "He's human," Catherine assured him. "But he's special. He was part of another experiment. The military was testing ways to enhance human abilities, to create perfect spies. They used children because their brains were more adaptable." Sam touched his temples where Alan had noticed the faint scars earlier. "They put things in my head," he said quietly. "It hurt. But Lisa helped us get away." Another explosion, much closer this time. Alarms blared from the consoles. "They've breached the main cavern," Catherine said, checking the screens. "We need to move deeper." She grabbed her bag and helped Sam to his feet. Alan remained on the floor, still processing the shattering revelations. He was a copy, a weapon. Everything he thought he knew about himself was a lie. "Alan, I know this is hard," Catherine said urgently. "But right now I need the soldier. We need to protect Sam and the evidence." Her words cut through his shock. Whatever he was, whoever he was, he could still fight. He could still make choices. Alan stood up, steadying himself. "What's the plan?" Relief flickered across Catherine's face. "There's a chamber deeper in the cave system. It contains the alien technology I told you about. If we can activate it, we might be able to disable the military's weapons systems long enough to send a signal." "A signal to who?" "To everyone. The truth about the war, about the clone program, about everything." Catherine handed him a data crystal. "All the evidence is on this. Lisa gathered it before they caught her." Alan pocketed the crystal, his thoughts turning to Lisa, his wife, the woman who had apparently seen enough good in him to try to save him, even knowing what he was. "Let's move," he said. They hurried down a narrow passage that led deeper into the cave system. The sounds of fighting grew louder behind them. Gunfire, shouted orders, the whine of energy weapons. The military forces were engaged with something, or someone. "Who are they fighting?" Alan asked as they ran. Catherine's expression was grim. "The Valkyrie peace delegation. They arrived 3 days ago to establish official contact. They've been hiding in the lower chambers." Peace delegation? The concept was still hard for Alan to accept. "Then why are they fighting?" "They're defending themselves," Catherine replied, "just like they were at Arcturus." The mention of that battle made Alan stumble. "What do you mean?" "The Battle of Arcturus wasn't what you were told," Catherine said. "The Valkyrie ships were trying to surrender. The military fired first and blamed it on them. They needed to keep the war going." They reached a massive door carved with symbols Alan didn't recognize. Catherine placed her hand on a panel beside it, and the door slowly slid open. Inside was a vast chamber filled with technology unlike anything Alan had ever seen. Gleaming pillars of light stretched from floor to ceiling. In the center of the room stood 5 tall figures, Valkyrie. They turned as the humans entered, their luminescent eyes widening. One of the Valkyrie stepped forward. Its forearms were held out, palms up, in what Alan somehow knew was a peaceful gesture. When it spoke, a device at its throat translated its words into English. "Catherine Holt," it said. "We were beginning to fear you would not reach us in time. The military found us sooner than expected," Catherine replied. "They're right behind us." The Valkyrie turned its gaze to Alan, and he fought the urge to draw his weapon. This was the enemy he had been trained to kill without hesitation. But now all his certainties were crumbling. "You have brought one of the replicated humans," the Valkyrie observed. "Does he understand his nature?" "I just told him," Catherine said. The Valkyrie studied Alan with eyes that seemed oddly compassionate. "We mourned when the original Alan Mercer was killed. He was working to bring peace between our peoples." Sam moved forward, reaching for Alan's hand. "That's why I thought you looked familiar when I first saw you," the boy said. "You look like the pictures Mom showed me of Uncle Alan." "Uncle Alan," Alan repeated, confused. Catherine nodded slowly. "There's one more thing you need to know, Alan. The original Alan Mercer was my brother-in-law. He was married to my sister Lisa, and he was—" She hesitated, then finished. "He was Sam's uncle." Alan felt as if the ground had dropped out from under him again. He looked at the boy holding his hand, and suddenly the familiarity in his features made sense. Those weren't Lisa's eyes he recognized in Sam. They were his own. Alan stared at Sam, seeing the boy with new understanding. The child wasn't just some random experiment or a Valkyrie hybrid as he'd been led to believe. He was family. Or rather, he was family to the original Alan Mercer, the man Alan had been created from. "I'm not your uncle," Alan said quietly to Sam. "I'm just a copy." "But you have his face," Sam said simply, "and maybe some of his goodness too." Before Alan could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The lead Valkyrie moved quickly to a control panel, its four arms working multiple controls simultaneously. "The military forces have breached the inner security doors," it announced. "They will be here in minutes." Catherine rushed to another console. "We need to send the signal now. If we can broadcast the evidence to every communication channel in human space, the truth will be impossible to hide." "What do you need me to do?" Alan asked, pushing aside his identity crisis. There would be time for that later if they survived. "Protect the transmitter while we work," Catherine said, pointing to a large device in the center of the chamber. "Once we start broadcasting, they'll do anything to stop us." Alan nodded and took up a position near the transmitter, checking his weapons. The Valkyrie moved around the chamber, activating various pieces of alien technology. Lights pulsed along, the walls in complex patterns. "What is all this?" Alan asked, gesturing to the alien equipment. "The legacy of those who came before both our species," the lead Valkyrie explained. "They learned that war leads only to extinction. They left these tools to help younger races avoid their fate." Sam sat at a smaller console, his small fingers moving with surprising skill across the controls. "I'm preparing the data packages," he said, "just like Lisa taught me." The sound of weapons fire echoed from the tunnel outside. Alan tensed, aiming, his gun at the entrance. "Almost ready," Catherine called out. "Alan, the data crystal." Alan reached into his pocket and tossed the crystal to her. She caught it and inserted it into a slot on the main console. "Broadcasting in 30 seconds, she announced. Suddenly, the massive door to the chamber burst open. A squad of heavily armed soldiers poured in, led by a familiar figure, Colonel Diane Wright. Her cold eyes found Alan immediately. "Mercer," she barked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "My job," Alan replied steadily. "Finding the truth." Wright signaled her soldiers to spread out around the chamber. "Your job was to eliminate the targets. Instead, I find you helping them in these—" She glared at the Valkyrie. "These creatures." "They're not our enemies," Alan said. "You are. You and everyone who lied about this war." Wright's face hardened. "You're malfunctioning. We can fix you, get you back to normal." "I'm not broken," Alan replied. "I'm finally seeing clearly." Behind him, Catherine called out, "Broadcast initiated." Wright's eyes widened in alarm. "Stop them," she ordered her soldiers. "Now." The soldiers opened fire. Alan ducked behind the transmitter, returning fire to keep them at bay. The Valkyrie activated some kind of energy shield that deflected some of the shots, but it was flickering, unstable. "How long?" Alan shouted to Catherine. 2 minutes for complete transmission," she replied, working frantically at the console. Soldier got past Alan's defensive fire and aimed at the transmitter. Alan lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. They struggled briefly before Alan knocked him unconscious. More soldiers poured into the chamber. The Valkyrie joined the fight, using non-lethal energy weapons that temporarily paralyzed their targets. 1 minute, Catherine called out. Wright, seeing the battle turning against her, drew her sidearm and aimed directly at Sam. "Shut it down, or I shoot the boy." Alan's blood ran cold. He raised his weapon, but he was too far away to get a clean shot. "Don't listen to her," Sam shouted. "The truth is more important." Wright's finger tightened on the trigger. In that moment, Alan made his decision. He charged forward directly into her line of fire. The shot hit him in the chest. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept moving, crashing into Wright and knocking her to the ground. Her weapon skittered across the floor. "Transmission complete." Catherine's voice rang out triumphantly. A wave of energy suddenly pulsed from the alien technology, washing over everyone in the chamber. All weapons, including Alan's, instantly deactivated. "The pacification field," the lead Valkyrie explained. "It renders all weapons inert within its range." Wright scrambled to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "You fools! Do you have any idea what you've done?" "We've ended your war," Catherine said simply. "The truth is out now. Everyone knows about the clone program, the false flag attacks, all of it." Alan struggled to stand, pressing a hand to his bleeding chest. Sam ran to him, supporting him as best he could. "Are you gonna die?" the boy asked, tears in his eyes. "Not today," Alan managed, though he wasn't sure if that was true. The wound was bad. Catherine hurried over, examining the injury. "We need to get him medical attention fast." The Valkyrie approached, holding a small device. "This will stabilize him until proper care can be provided." As the alien applied the device to his wound, Alan felt an immediate cooling sensation. The pain receded slightly. Around them, the soldiers looked confused, uncertain what to do now that their weapons were useless and their commander's deceptions had been exposed. Wright backed toward the door. "This isn't over. The higher-ups will never let this stand." "It's too late," Catherine said. "The signal went out to every colony, every ship, every station. There's no covering this up." From somewhere above, a new sound emerged, the rumble of ships landing. "The Valkyrie diplomatic fleet," the lead alien explained. "They were waiting in orbit for our signal. Now they come to offer formal peace." Wright made a break for the exit, but 2 of the Valkyrie moved with surprising speed to block her path. She was quickly subdued. As the chamber filled with more Valkyrie, these ones in what appeared to be ceremonial attire, Sam stayed close to Alan's side. "What happens now?" the boy asked. Alan looked at Catherine, who was speaking with what appeared to be a Valkyrie leader. "Peace negotiations, I guess. The truth comes out. People will have to face what was done in their name." "What about you?" Sam pressed, his young face serious. "Will you go away?" Alan thought about it. He wasn't the original Alan Mercer. He wasn't Sam's uncle. His whole identity had been fabricated. And yet, here he was, making his own choices, feeling his own pain, living his own life. "I don't know," he admitted. "I need to figure out who I am now." "You're the man who saved us," Sam said simply. "That's who you are." Catherine returned to them, relief evident on her face. "The Valkyrie will take us to their medical ship. They can heal your wound." "And then?" Alan asked. "And then we find Lisa," she said. "The Valkyrie have intelligence on where she's being held. They've agreed to help rescue her and the other prisoners." Alan nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. At the thought of meeting Lisa, the woman he remembered as his wife but who was actually married to the original version of himself. As they made their way out of the chamber, Sam slipped his small hand into Alan's. "Lisa always said Uncle Alan was a hero," the boy said. "I think you're a hero too." Alan squeezed the boy's hand gently. He wasn't the man who had discovered the truth about the war. He wasn't the real Alan Mercer. But perhaps he could still be something good, something worthy, a protector, a friend, maybe even in time, family. As they emerged from the caves into the reddish light of Proxima B's dawn, Alan looked up at the Valkyrie ships hovering overhead. They were nothing like the monstrous invaders he had been programmed to hate. Like him, they had been cast as villains in someone else's story. Now it was time to write a new one.